Your human fleet jumps into battle. The enemy never stood a chance. The star system of Proxima Centauri glowed red against the darkness. Admiral Yunji Park leaned forward in her command chair on the bridge of the UES Dauntless. Her dark eyes narrowed as she studied the holographic display. 3 more colony worlds had gone silent in the past week. The Void Collective was moving faster than anyone had predicted. "Admiral, incoming transmission from Hegemony Command," Lieutenant Junho said, his voice steady despite the tension filling the bridge. "Put it through," Yunji ordered, straightening her uniform jacket. The hologram flickered to life, revealing the elongated face of High Commander Vax of the Galactic Hegemony. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of irritation among his species. "Admiral Park, you have mobilized your fleet without authorization," Vax stated. "The human contingent is to stand down immediately. The Hegemony Council has determined that this new species presents no significant threat." Yunji kept her face neutral. "With respect, High Commander, the evidence suggests otherwise. 3 Hegemony worlds have already fallen. The Void Collective isn't following any known pattern of expansion. The Hegemony has maintained peace for 8,000 years, Admiral. We understand threats better than your species, which has barely achieved interstellar travel. Your concerns are noted but unnecessary." The transmission ended abruptly. Yunji turned to her tactical officer, Commander Daeho Kim. "They still think we're children playing with technology we don't understand," she said quietly. Daeho nodded. "The Hegemony has forgotten what it means to face extinction. Humanity hasn't." On the main view screen, the fleet of 30 human ships moved in formation. They were smaller than the massive Hegemony vessels, but what they lacked in size, they made up for in innovation. For 5 years, the best minds on Earth had worked in secret to develop the new jump drive technology. While the Hegemony relied on stable wormhole gates for travel, humanity had created something different, unpredictable, adaptable, just like humans themselves. "Admiral," called out the science officer, Sujin. "I've completed the analysis of the Void Collective's movement patterns. They're not random, they're hunting." Yunji walked over to Sujin's station. "Explain. The worlds they've targeted all have specific geological compositions. They're seeking something beneath the surfaces." Sujin pulled up a 3-dimensional map. "And if this pattern continues, their next target will be New Busan." Yunji felt her heart skip. New Busan was home to nearly 2 million human colonists. While the Hegemony might dismiss the loss of a few outposts, an entire human colony was different. How long until they reach New Busan? At their current speed, 3 days. Yunji returned to her chair and pressed the fleet-wide communication button. "All ships, this is Admiral Park. Set course for New Busan colony. Maximum speed." Her communications officer turned in surprise. "Admiral, the Hegemony just ordered us to stand down." "I know what they ordered, Lieutenant, but they're fighting this war with outdated thinking. The Void Collective isn't like any enemy they've faced before. For centuries, the Hegemony had controlled the galaxy with technological superiority. When humanity joined the galactic community 50 years ago, they were treated as newcomers, tolerated but not respected. Human innovation was dismissed as primitive, their strategic suggestions ignored. But humans had something the Hegemony had lost over millennia of unchallenged rule: adaptability born from struggle. In her quarters that night, Yunji reviewed the classified files on the new jump technology. The Hegemony believed human ships could only make standard jumps through known space. They had no idea that Earth scientists had discovered how to perform micro-jumps, short-range teleportation that could place ships directly inside enemy formations. It was dangerous, untested in actual combat, but it might be their only advantage against the overwhelming numbers of the Void Collective. A soft chime announced a visitor. Commander Jiwoo Lee, her oldest friend and strategic advisor, entered carrying 2 cups of steaming tea. "The fleet is ready," Jiwoo said, handing Yunji a cup. "But are you sure about this? If we're wrong, I'll spend the rest of my life in a Hegemony prison," Yunji finished. "But if we're right and do nothing, there won't be a New Busan left to save." She looked at the star map, where the predicted path of the Void Collective glowed like a cancer spreading through the galaxy. The hegemony has forgotten something important, Jiwoo. Peace isn't maintained by councils and protocols. Sometimes it requires action. She sipped her tea, and sometimes the ones who understand the fight best are those who were once considered too primitive to have a seat at the table. As the Dauntless led the human fleet toward New Busan, Yoonji knew they were jumping into more than just a battle. They were jumping into history. Human fleet jumps into battle. The enemy never stood a chance. The UES Indomitable, flagship of the human fleet, dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Busan system. Admiral Yoonji Park stood on the bridge, her face illuminated by the red emergency lights. On the main screen, the remains of the Hegemony Defense Fleet drifted in broken clusters. 3 massive Void Collective hive ships moved slowly toward the colony planet, their black hulls absorbing the light around them. "We're too late," whispered Lieutenant Junho. "No," Yoonji said, firmly. "The colony shields are still holding. We have time." A transmission crackled through. "Human vessels, this is Commander Elzar of the Hegemony 4th Fleet. What are you doing here? You were ordered to stand down." Yoonji noticed the fear in the alien's voice. The mighty Hegemony, rulers of the galaxy for thousands of years, were afraid. "We're here to help," she replied simply. "Prepare to receive tactical data." Before Commander Elzar could object, Yoonji cut the transmission. "Send the signal for all ship captains to join the secure briefing." 10 minutes later, the holographic images of 29 human captains stood in a circle around her in the Indomitable's war room. Some looked nervous, others determined. All were ready. "The situation is worse than we expected," Yoonji began, bringing up the tactical display. "The Void Collective has destroyed most of the Hegemony fleet. Their hive ships are larger than our intelligence suggested." Captain Taeyeon Choi of the UES Thunderbolt spoke up. "Admiral, even with our new jump technology, those ships are massive. Our weapons may not be enough." "You're right," Yoonji acknowledged, "which is why we're not going to fight them conventionally." She activated a simulation showing the human fleet performing coordinated microjumps directly into the heart of the enemy formation. The captains murmured in surprise. "This is Operation Thunderclap," Yoonji explained. "Instead of engaging from a distance where their superior firepower will destroy us, we jump directly to these key points within their formation." Commander Daeho highlighted several areas on the alien ship's schematics. "These are what we believe to be critical junction points in their hive network. Their ships operate as a single organism. Cut these connections and they lose their advantage." "This is impossible," Captain Min Ho Kang objected. "The jump calculations would have to be perfect. One mistake and we collide with their ships upon exit." "The jump calculations are already done," Yoonji replied. "Our AI systems have been running simulations for weeks." She didn't mention that the success rate in the simulations was only 63%. Some ships would be lost. It was a gamble, but the alternative was watching New Busan fall. "Once inside their formation, each ship will have operational freedom," Yoonji continued. "Your secondary objective is to cause confusion. The Void Collective operates as a hive mind. They cannot comprehend independent action. Use that against them." The briefing continued for another 30 minutes as they discussed specific targets and contingency plans. When it ended, Captain Subin Park of the UES Valiant remained behind. "Admiral, the Hegemony commanders will never agree to this strategy," Subin said quietly. "They'll see it as too risky." Yoonji nodded. "That's why we're not asking for permission. The Hegemony has forgotten what it means to adapt. They've relied on superior technology for so long they've lost the ability to innovate." As the captains returned to their ships, Yoonji felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. If her plan failed, humanity would lose its first colony. But there was something else at stake, proving that humans belonged among the stars not just as junior partners in the Hegemony but as equals. On the bridge, Commander Jiwoo approached with a datapad. "The Hegemony commander is demanding to know our plan. Tell him we're implementing standard human defense protocol," Yoonji said, "and prepare the fleet for jump sequence." The human ships moved into formation, seemingly positioning themselves for a conventional attack. On the hegemony vessels, alien officers watched with dismissive confidence. The humans were brave but foolish to challenge the Void Collective with such small ships. "All vessels report ready, Admiral," Lieutenant Junho announced. Yunji took a deep breath. "Send the final jump coordinates to all ships. Prepare for synchronized micro-jump on my mark." The bridge fell silent. The fate of New Busan, and perhaps humanity's place in the galaxy, hung in the balance. "All ships," Yunji said calmly. "Jump now." In perfect synchronization, 30 human warships vanished from space only to reappear seconds later scattered throughout the Void Collective formation. The battle had begun, and the enemy would never know what hit them. Human fleet jumps into battle. The enemy never stood a chance. Space bent and twisted as the human fleet vanished from their formation. For one heartbeat, the battlefield was silent. The massive Void Collective ships hung motionless, their black hulls gleaming against the stars. The remaining hegemony vessels watched in confusion as their human allies simply disappeared. Then chaos erupted. In a brilliant flash of blue light, the UES Indomitable materialized just 300 meters from the central hive ship's command section. 29 other human vessels appeared simultaneously at different points throughout the enemy formation, each positioned with impossible precision. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Yoonji Park gripped her command chair as the ship shuddered violently. "Jump complete," announced Lieutenant Junho, his voice tight with tension. "Position is exact. We're inside their defensive perimeter." Yoonji stared at the view screen. They were so close to the Void Collective ship that individual details of its strange, organic-looking hull were visible. No ship had ever gotten this close to a hive ship and survived. "All weapons fire at designated targets," she ordered calmly. The Indomitable's main guns roared to life, sending focused beams of energy into what intelligence had identified as a neural cluster of the hive ship. At such close range, the shots couldn't miss. Across the battlefield, human ships executed similar precision strikes. Each captain had memorized their targets and knew exactly where to hit the enemy to cause maximum damage with minimal firepower. On one, the hegemony command ship, Admiral Thelax watched in disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered, his four eyes blinking rapidly. "No jump drive can be that precise. The humans should have crashed into the collective ships." His tactical officer, equally stunned, replied, "The humans are inside the collective's defense grid. They're hitting critical systems before the hive mind can respond." Thelax had fought the Void Collective twice before. Each time the battle had followed predictable patterns, slow, methodical exchanges of fire from safe distances as massive ships maneuvered for advantage. But this was something new, something that defied all established rules of space combat. Aboard the UES Thunderbolt, Captain Taeyeon Choi felt sweat dripping down his back as his ship hovered less than a kilometer from what appeared to be a propulsion node on one of the smaller hive ships. "Targeting systems locked," his weapons officer reported. "Firing solution ready." "Fire everything we have," Taeyeon ordered. "Then prepare for secondary jump." The Thunderbolt unleashed its arsenal, bright energy beams cutting into the Void Collective ship. The alien vessel shuddered, dark fluid leaking from the wound they had created. But the Void Collective was adapting. Across the battlefield, the hive ships began to respond, tentacle-like appendages extending toward the human vessels. "Secondary jump coordinates locked," called out the Thunderbolt's navigator. "Ready on your command." Taeyeon watched as one of the tentacles drew closer. "Jump now!" The Thunderbolt vanished, only to reappear 2 kilometers away, behind a different section of the same hive ship. Again, they fired at point-blank range, targeting another critical system before the enemy could react. Back on the Indomitable, Admiral Yoonji received the first damage reports. 3 human ships had been caught by the collective's defenses. 2 had managed emergency jumps away, but 1, the UES Defiant, had been ensnared. "The collective is adapting faster than we predicted," Commander Jiwoo warned. "They're learning our patterns." Yoonji nodded grimly. "Signal all ships to implement random jump protocols. No more coordinated attacks." This was the second phase of Operation Thunderclap, controlled chaos. Each human ship would now jump independently, following no pattern the hive mind could predict. The hegemony fleet, seeing the initial success of the human attack, began to move forward. But they were still fighting conventionally, firing from distance with massive weapons that took time to charge and aim. "Admiral," Lieutenant Jun-Ho called out, "the hegemony commander is asking for our jump calculations. He wants his ships to join us inside the enemy formation." Yoonji shook her head. "Tell him our jump system is incompatible with their technology." It wasn't entirely a lie. The micro-jump technology required human reflexes and decision-making speed that the hegemony's careful, methodical approach couldn't match. Humanity had turned their perceived weakness, their youth as a spacefaring species, into their greatest strength. As the Indomitable prepared for another jump, Yoonji looked at the tactical display. For the first time since the Void Collective had appeared in this sector, they were on the defensive. The battle was far from over, but something had changed. The galaxy's newest species had just rewritten the rules of space warfare. Human fleet jumps into battle. The enemy never stood a chance. The UES Valiant shuddered as energy blasts from the Void Collective ship glanced off its shields. Captain Subin Park held onto her command chair, watching as her crew worked with practiced efficiency despite the chaos outside. "Shields at 60%, reported her tactical officer. "The hive ship is tracking our movements now." Subin studied the tactical display. The initial surprise of the human fleet's jump strategy had worked perfectly. All three main Void Collective vessels showed significant damage to their neural clusters and propulsion systems. But the alien ships were adapting quickly, predicting jump points and laying traps. "They learn fast," Subin muttered. "Helm, prepare for jump sequence Delta. Random coordinates within 2 kilometers of target junction point." As her ship prepared to jump again, Subin watched the larger battle unfolding. Across her screens, human ships appeared and disappeared across the battlefield in a dizzying dance, striking critical systems before vanishing again. The Void Collective, which had never faced this kind of warfare, was struggling to form a unified response. The Valiant jumped, reappearing beneath the belly of the largest hive ship. 3 smaller human vessels were already there, focused on what appeared to be a critical power node. "Target locked," announced the weapons officer. "Firing main cannons." Energy beams lanced out, joining the assault from the other ships. The node erupted in a cascade of blue-green energy, sending ripples through the massive hive ship's structure. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Yoonji Park received the update. "Power node disabled on Hive Ship 1, Lieutenant Jun-Ho reported. The collective vessels are showing signs of desynchronization. This was what they had hoped for. The Void Collective operated as a single organism, each ship connected to the others through a complex network. Disrupt enough connections, and the hive mind would fragment. "Signal all ships," Yoonji ordered. "Focus fire on the remaining neural clusters. Use randomized jump patterns to avoid prediction." As the battle entered its second hour, the Void Collective began to adapt in unexpected ways. Tentacle-like appendages extended from the hive ships, trying to grab human vessels before they could jump away. Several smaller human ships had already been damaged, forced to retreat to the edge of the system. Aboard the UES Thunderbolt, Captain Taeyeon Choi faced a crisis. His ship's jump drive had been damaged by debris from an exploding section of hive ship. "Jump drive offline," his engineer reported. "We need 5 minutes for emergency repairs." Taeyeon looked at the tactical display. They were dangerously close to the second hive ship, and without the ability to jump, they were vulnerable. "All power to shields," he ordered. "Evasive maneuvers. Keep us moving until the jump drive is back online." The Thunderbolt twisted and turned, using its conventional engines to dodge the increasingly accurate fire from the hive ship. 2 hegemony cruisers moved to provide covering fire, impressed by the human ship's agility. Across the comms, Admiral Yoonji's voice cut through the noise. "All ships with operational jump drives, execute final hammer protocol." This was the last phase of their strategy, a synchronized attack on all 3 hive ships simultaneously. 20 human vessels, scattered across the battlefield, began calculating jump coordinates. On his damaged ship, Tae-Yon watched helplessly as his comrades prepared for the final assault. His engineer worked frantically on the jump drive. 3 minutes, Captain, the engineer called out. Maybe 2 if we bypass safety protocols. Do it, Tae-Yon ordered. He wanted his ship to be part of the final blow. In the command center of the Hegemony flagship, Admiral Thelax watched in astonishment as the human fleet executed maneuvers that his own ships could never attempt. For thousands of years, the Hegemony had considered itself the pinnacle of military strategy, yet here was a species barely out of its cradle, fighting with a creativity and adaptability that bordered on madness. Prepare all remaining weapons, Thelax ordered his crew. When the humans make their final attack, we will support with everything we have. It was an unprecedented admission, the ancient Hegemony following the lead of humanity. Aboard the HFY Indomitable, Admiral Yoonji gave the final command. All ships final hammer jump in 3, 2, 1, execute. Across the battlefield, human ships vanished, only to reappear seconds later at precise points around each hive ship. Their weapons fired in perfect unison, striking the weakened neural clusters and power nodes, and at the last possible moment, the UES Thunderbolt joined them, its jump drive repaired just in time to be part of the decisive blow. The 3 Void collective ships shuddered, their coordinated movements faltering. Without their hive connection, they were just enormous ships with no unified purpose. The battle was about to turn from survival to victory. Human fleet jumps into battle. The Yao enemy never stood a chance. Silence hung over the grand chamber of the Galactic Hegemony Council. 27 alien representatives sat on raised platforms, their faces showing a mixture of shock, respect, and unease. Admiral Yoonji Park stood in the center of the room, still wearing her battle-stained uniform. 3 days had passed since the battle at New Busan, and she had been summoned to explain her actions. High Chancellor Vax spoke first, his 4 eyes blinking slowly. Admiral Park, you directly disobeyed an order from this council. Your fleet engaged the Void Collective without authorization. Under normal circumstances, this would result in severe punishment. Yoonji remained silent, her posture straight and dignified. However, Vax continued, these are not normal circumstances. The battle recordings have been reviewed by our military analysts. Your unconventional strategy saved not only the human colony, but possibly prevented the fall of the entire sector. The representative from the Tholian Federation leaned forward. We have existed for 12,000 years, Admiral Park. In that time, we have never seen a military force execute jumps with such precision, nor adapt so quickly to an enemy's tactics. How did humanity develop this capability without our knowledge? Yoonji chose her words carefully. Necessity breeds innovation, Council member. Humanity spent most of its history fighting for survival on a single planet. When we reached the stars and joined the Hegemony, we brought that fighting spirit with us. She didn't mention the years of secret development, the failed tests, the pilots who had died perfecting the microjump technology. Some secrets were best kept hidden, even now. The Void Collective has retreated beyond our borders, announced the Militech representative. Their remaining ship was severely damaged. Our analysis suggests they will not return for some time. They will return, Yoonji said firmly, and when they do, they will have adapted to our tactics. We must be ready, with new ones. The council chamber filled with murmurs. For millennia, the Hegemony had relied on its technological superiority and vast fleets. The idea of constantly evolving tactics was foreign to them. Chancellor Vax raised a hand for silence. Admiral Park, this council owes you a debt. Your actions, while unorthodox, saved countless lives. The human colony on New Busan stands because of your fleet's bravery. Yoonji nodded in acknowledgement but remained silent. However, Vax continued, there must be consequences for disobeying direct orders. The council will need time to determine. appropriate measures. As the council members began to debate among themselves, a side door opened. Captain Taeyeon Choi of the Thunderbolt entered, followed by Admiral Thelax of the Hegemony Fleet. Both showed signs of recent combat. Taeyeon, with a bandage across his forehead, Thelax with his left arm in a healing sleeve. "High Chancellor," Thelax addressed the council, "if I may speak on behalf of the military forces who witnessed the battle firsthand." Vax nodded permission. "I have served the hegemony for 200 years, Thelax began. "In that time I have followed every regulation, every protocol established by this council. When the human ships executed their jump strategy, I believed they were committing suicide." He turned to look at Yoonji with newfound respect. "I was wrong. What I witnessed was not recklessness but calculated courage. The human fleet accomplished what 3 hegemony battle groups could not. They adapted when adaptation was required." The chamber fell silent as Thelax's words sank in. For a high-ranking hegemony officer to praise a junior species so openly was unprecedented. "Perhaps," Thelax continued, "what the hegemony needs is not to punish Admiral Park, but to learn from her. The galaxy is changing. New threats are emerging that our old tactics cannot counter." The debate lasted for hours. In the end, the council reached a decision that surprised everyone. Admiral Yoonji Park would not be punished. Instead, she would be appointed to a new position, strategic advisor to the Hegemony Defense Force. Her first task would be to train Hegemony commanders in the flexible tactics that had proven so effective against the Void Collective. As Yoonji left the council chamber, Captain Taeyeon fell into step beside her. "They're afraid of us now," he said quietly. Yoonji shook her head. "They respect us. There's a difference. And the Void Collective. They'll be back," she replied. "But next time they won't just face humanity. They'll face a united galaxy that's learned to adapt." As their shuttle departed for the human flagship, Yoonji looked out at the stars. Humanity had proven itself not through technological superiority, but through creativity, courage, and the willingness to take risks. In doing so, they had changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The enemy never stood a chance, not because humans were stronger, but because they had never forgotten what it meant to fight for survival.